woodworking in a small shop means that your workbench has to do it all. It's got to wear a lot of hats. So in today's video, I'm going to share with you tips to make your workbench mobile, versatile, and efficient. And to show you that I'm not just going to pull these tips out of thin air, I'm going to take you through my recent workbench build. This guy right here. Freaking yellow jackets, man. Always finding their way in here. Guess that's that's my problem, not yours. So, all right, let's go. So when I say that your workbench has to wear a lot of hats, I mean it's got to be a workbench, it's got to function as an assembly table, and it's got to work as an outfeed table. But what if you're like me and your shop floors are not straight and or level? What do you do then? Because the conventional wisdom says that your outfeed table should be the same height as your table saw, but if you have wonky floors like I do, that may not work for you. I know it didn't work for me. So here's what I did. I made my outfeed table about 1/2 inch, really it's about 3/8 of an inch, shorter than my table saw. And the reason why that works for me is because, let's say I have a short piece of stock here. As I'm pushing that through, I'm putting downward pressure on it and against the fence, and it is lifted up off the outfeed table, but it doesn't matter because it's so short, I'm not in any danger of it being too heavy and I'm losing control of the piece. Push it through the blade and I just push it through like that. Now, when I come with a longer piece and I push it through, as you can see, it's lifted up off the outfeed table just like the shorter piece, but because of the way my floors are shaped, as I push it through, that gap between the workpiece and the table disappears. So again, as it gets heavier and harder for me to keep pushed down and against the fence, that's when the outfeed table kind of comes to the rescue. So with longer pieces, the outfeed table works as support. With shorter pieces where I don't really need the support, there's a little bit of a gap and a little bit of a drop off. So not ideal. I would love to have a table that is even with the table saw and it works flawlessly the whole way through, but with my wonky floors and probably yours too, sometimes we have to make compromises. So if I had my outfeed table the same height as my table saw, yes, on shorter work pieces, it would catch the workpiece as soon as it exits the table saw. But again, with smaller pieces, I'm fine. I don't need any help, if you will, on shorter pieces. But on longer pieces, if my outfeed table was the same height as my table saw, what it would do on the longer pieces is, as I pushed it through, it would start to lift up my workpiece off of the table saw, which is definitely a no-go. So if you have a wonky floor like I do, try making your outfeed table a little bit shorter than your table saw. I promise you it'll be fine. A table that's a little bit too short is way better than an outfeed table that's a little bit too high. All right, so small shop work holding. First, let's start with what you won't see on my bench, and that's any kind of dog holes or dovetail grooves or T-track on the top of the bench. And that's just because I never had it before. I never really had a use for it. If I need to clamp anything to the top of my bench, I've always just used clamps and that's worked fine. So I didn't feel a need to drill any holes or anything like that on the top of my bench. But the top being made of solid wood, if I wanted to change that in the future, it's as easy as drilling a few holes or routing a few grooves. So no big deal. But what I did have that I liked in my old bench was a tail vise. So I did want to have a way to have some work holding on the side of my bench. But what I didn't like about that vise is that when I wasn't using it, which was, most of the time, it was still there. And so it stuck out and I would constantly be walking and running into it. Now, luckily, I'm tall enough or the bench is low enough that I never, hit anything too valuable, but it was annoying. So I wanted to have a work holding solution that is there when I need it, but out of the way when I don't. So I routed a dovetail groove on the side of the top, and there's one on both sides of the bench. And as you can see, when it's not in use, there's nothing here. But when I do want to use it, if you're not familiar with how it works, I just take these micro jig dovetail clamps. Stick them in the grooves. And whatever I want to hold. Fasten like that. And it's not going anywhere. And as you can see, it does stick out a little bit when it's in use, but obviously all vices do that. When I don't want to use it, now it's out of the way. And another little thing that I did was I routed some dovetail grooves on the bottom side of the bench where the overhang is, where I can store my clamps out of the way. Oh, if you see another groove there, that's not to hold a third set of clamps. That is a little router mishap. But, you know, what are you gonna do? And if you ask yourself, why did you keep going with the router, even though the groove wasn't straight? Yeah, I don't know. We don't ask those kind of questions. Okay, the storage of the workbench. Now, how is the storage of this workbench small shop specific? Well, like I said, I'm constantly having to move my bench around when I'm in here, whether it be to use some of my larger tools in the shop or just work on larger projects. There's never a time when I'm coming in here to do some work where I'm not moving my bench somewhere. So with that, oftentimes my bench will be pushed up on one side of the shop or the other, and I don't have access to the things that I want to get access to that are on the side of the bench that's pushed up against the wall or pushed up against the miter station or what have you. So with the drawers, I just made them wide enough to span the full width of the bench rather than having 4 drawers on this side and then 4 drawers on that side. I just made them go all the way through. So I have access to everything. So like, for example, if my paste wax is on that side of the bench and I know where it is, I just pull this drawer all the way out. At the back of this drawer is the front of the other side, and I just grab my paste wax. And it's super simple because these are just boxes without a top. There's no undermount drawer slides, there's no side mount drawer slides, there's no drawer runners you have to make, nothing. You just make a box. That's it. And what do the boxes run on? Well, let me take the drawers out so I can show you kind of the innards of this base. Okay, so to form these carcass for the drawers, I have walls on either side that are flush with the leg. And to get the walls flush with the leg, I just took the inside corner of each leg and I put a rabbet in there, the same thickness as the piece of plywood. I did that with my dado stack at the table saw. So, and then I just screw those in, and that's how the plywood is flush with the leg here. Did the same thing effectively with the bottom. I put a rabbet in the bottom support on the front and the back and the sides and fit the piece of plywood in there flush. So the bottom is flush with this stretcher here. And the center horizontal piece and the 2 center vertical pieces are just held on with pocket hole screws. Now it did take some hardwood edge banding and cover up the plywood edges to make it look a little better when the drawers are closed, but I didn't do that with the edge of the drawers because I didn't want to. And I love the way that this turned out because, like I said, I have access to everything in my drawers from either side of the bench, and really easy to do and cheaper because I'm not buying a bunch of drawer slides or anything like that. It's basically just a box that slides into a box. Okay, and what type of small shop workbench video would this be if I didn't talk about mobility? And it's not just as simple as putting casters on your workbench. There are certain types of casters that I believe are more beneficial than others, and that's what I have here. These are the smart casters from a company called Bennington Manufacturing. They're a US-based company, And I saw these on another video, like maybe a year ago, maybe longer actually. And when I saw it, I immediately was like, these casters are the answers to my workbench caster prayers. Because, well, I'll show you how they work here in a minute, but there are a few different types of casters you can put on there. You can put the ones on that, you know, you take them off when you want more room so you don't trip over them or whatever. But like, that's crazy. I'm not putting any casters on that I have to take on and off every time I want to move my bench. I've already said I move my bench way too much for that. Then there's the other types of casters that I actually had on my old bench, which you go around to each individual wheel and depress with your foot or lift up with your foot or what have you to unlock or lock that particular wheel and move your bench around. The problem with that is that you have to go around to each individual wheel every time you want to move it. And be honest, with mine, I usually just kept two of them locked and kind of drug my table around where it needed to go. So the benefit of these casters is that there's no going around to each individual wheel. You just lift your workbench up to unlock them and then do that to each end of the workbench and then lift it up again to put it back where it goes. So let me show you a little demonstration here. See, just lift it up like that, and now this thing rolls anywhere you want it to go. And like, it's super simple. Actually, I don't know if it's simple or not. I'm not an engineer, but it seems simple. The idea seems simple. But it works. I haven't seen anything like this. Again, for someone who moves your workbench as much as I do, these things are a game changer. Now, the one caveat I will say though, is that if you're not comfortable lifting up your workbench, I mean, you know, lifting up one end of it, not like lifting over your head like the Hulk, then these casters might not be for you. But this is a pretty heavy workbench. It's solid oak, and I can lift it up on each end, no problem. So it's not as hard as you think, but if that's an issue for you, then you might want to look elsewhere for casters. And if you want to know more about these casters, I'm going to be posting an install and review video on these. But I guess a little announcement, I'm going to be posting that on a second channel, which is going to be a tool focused channel. I would like to post it here, but you got to kind of dance with the algorithm a little bit and a little bit of inside baseball. The algorithm doesn't really like when you mix tool stuff with build stuff and tip stuff. So all my tool stuff going forward is going to be over on that channel. And I will leave a link in the description to that channel if you want to go ahead and subscribe. But it's going to be all tool content. So if you like tool content, go and subscribe. If you don't, then don't. And one more thing I want to touch on, which maybe I should have touched on first, is whatever you do, make it your own, make it personal. Do things that work for you in your shop. For example, this overhang that I have right here on my bench. The reason I have this is for a few reasons. One, because when I bump it up to my table saw to use it as an outfeed table, I need some room here in order to plug in the dust collection port out of my table saw. Two, like I said, I don't have any dog holes or anything like that in the top of my workbench. So in order to clamp things to the top of the bench, I'm going to need an overhang for that. And three, you know, I like to come out to the shop and just sit at my workbench. I like to think about projects or think about videos, or just really just come out here and hang out, watch a video on my phone, watch a game on my phone, something like that. Like, I just like to spend time out here. And when I'm sitting at my workbench, the overhang gives me a place to put my legs. And another thing you might have noticed is the black top. And my old bench had a dark top, and I like that. So much like a new car will come out and they'll have a color scheme that pays tribute to like an older model or something like that. I was doing kind of the same thing with my workbench. I liked the dark top on my previous workbench, so I tried something new that I hadn't tried before and tried black stain on the top of this, and I like it. I really like how it turned out. Will it show dust and imperfections and all that stuff more clearly? Yeah, I mean, there's some on here already, some imperfections that it shows. But, you know, okay, I liked it. I wanted to do it, so I did it. It made me happy. And that's really what you should be doing. That should be the number one driver to anything you do in your shop. You know, what makes you happy? And hopefully these tips I gave you today will help you in that noble pursuit of happiness. If they did, then maybe you like these tips for laying out a small shop. All right? I'll take it easy.